director and scientist Ashoke Mitra.
Over to Rumi.
Hello and a warm welcome to all the listeners of Horizons. I am Rumi Malik and my guest on the show today is a storyteller. A storyteller whose own life story merits a story. Confused? Don't be. We're going to speak to someone who has ventured into writing after being a very successful techie. The person in question is Ashoke Mitra. Hi Ashok, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Ashok, let's begin from the beginning. Tell us about your early life, where you were born in, any memories from that city, education.
I was born and brought up in Kolkata. I've been working out of Kolkata for the last 16 years, but as they say that I have come out of Kolkata, but Kolkata has never come out of me. So
Yes.
I'm like a Calcasian, and all my stories, all my memories, everything, they hover around that city. Wonderful city, born there. And my education also has been there in Kolkata. Balikon Science College is where I did my MSc in biochemistry. Post that, I went to Banaras to study in ITBHU, did my MTech in biochemical engineering there, passed out in 1999, and then I came to Delhi and started working for Ranbaxy. I started as a research scientist, and I was doing hardcore chemical drug research for 7 years, and you will be surprised to know that I have 7 patents against my name.
Amazing, isn't that? And you just almost revealed your age to our listeners when you said you passed out in 99.
Let them go ahead and calculate.
People will be dropping their jaws saying that, my 7 patents, is it?
Yeah. So after that, working for 7 years, then I shifted my line. I shifted to the wealth management domain, joined Genpact, and then after that in 2012 I joined Infosys. I've been in Infosys for the last close to 4 years, and writing had always been my passion, my hobby since very childhood.
Did you win any competitions at school or college?
I was the one who would never participate in any debate.
Yeah.
I would never get into any writing competition, nothing. But I would keep on scribbling, and only my people who are very close to me, they will get to know that what I have written and how I have written.
Yeah.
But I was a very kind of a shy person who would run away from the limelight.
And what would you scribble about? Love notes? Let's say love letters?
Well,
Something tells me they were.
yeah, obviously, definitely they were there.
Yeah.
Poems in Bengali, there were poems in English, there were proses that I used to write. Then short stories came a bit later. So maybe when I was in my 11th standard, 12th standard is when I started writing short stories, because I always thought short stories always fascinated me, always. Rabindranath Tagore, O. Henry, Maupassant, Satyajit Ray, they were fascinating. I always thought that what a short story could communicate and the message that a short story could give, a novel could never give that message in such a short duration of time. Not to take away anything from the novels, but short stories had always fascinated me. So, and I would capture those moments, those personalities whom I would meet, the different facets of the characters, and I'll try and portray them in the stories that I would write. Most in Bengali, I never wrote in English. And my first short story, I remember, originated at the backdrop of Bombay, because I had gone to Bombay, and that story was I saw a maid there who used to work in one of my friend's uncle's place, and she used to stay there. She was given an accommodation there, but she was not paid a single penny, because accommodation comes very scarce in Bombay.
Yes.
And she got the accommodation, and she used to work there because she got the accommodation. And that kind of came and hit me.
Yes.
That it was kind of a slavery to me.
Exploitation. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that was the first story that I wrote in Bengali. I shared with my mom. My mom
When was this? What year was this?
This was when I was in in my 9th or 10th standard, maybe back in 1997.
2000 years back.
Yeah. So that's, and I shared it with my mom, and my mom was really, really happy. Yeah. She had always been in literature, and she wanted to become a writer, but like tuition didn't allow. So she was really happy, and then she always encouraged me to write, and I kept on writing a lot.
So then when your first book of short stories titled Shifting Clouds came out in 2014,
That's right.
your mother is living her life vicariously through you.
Yes, unfortunately she couldn't see the launch of the book because she passed away in 2003, but I'm sure that she was there during the launch somewhere, and she has always been appreciative of the fact that one of her dreams came true, her son.
Yes, lovely. And then Shifting Clouds also has met with a lot of appreciation from Ruskin Bond.
That's right, yeah.
And tell us more about it.
So that was a story in itself, and that story features in my next book, which hopefully should be out in 3-4 months' time. That itself is a story how I got the appreciation from him. I was trying to reach out to him, and as you know that he's a person who is
He's a recluse.
Yeah, absolutely a recluse, and he doesn't have an email, he doesn't have a mobile phone,
Yes.
He doesn't interact in any kind of social media, and there's that shop in Missouri where he comes and sits for 2 hours on a Saturday evening. That's about it. So I was trying to reach out to him through all the different possible methods, but I couldn't. So then I decided that let me just go and meet him there. So I went and I met him there, and then he gave me about 10 minutes of time, and I read him one of my stories there. And the name of the story is Octogenarian, which is the first story in this book.
Yes.
And he was also about to turn an octogenarian about a week from that date. And he was very, very appreciative of that story, and he really liked it, and he then went through the other stories, and that's where he endorsed my book. So
It's so lovely. Shall I read it out? A book full of genuine feeling about life and its unpredictability shall find many readers and admirers.
And it has actually.
It has, isn't it?
Yeah.
I see you in many literary festivals. I see you mentoring people. How's the journey been from here? The clouds have led to a rainbow?
Yeah, absolutely. It has opened a complete new vista for me. Before 2014, for me, a book fair or literature festival were from the other side of the table. I would go and listen to the authors or pick up the books and read or buy. But after 2014, I was actually sitting on the other side of the table, where I could also contribute, I could also guide people, mentor people, young authors who would walk up to me with their dreams. They would ask that they have certain ideas in their head, certain stories in their head, but they have skepticism also that whether they should write or not. But I always encourage them, and I always tell them that this is the right time. And as on today, you have many opportunities,
Yes.
right? There are so many different forms of publishing which are there.
Self-publishing.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
others. Yes,
So
yes.
then things have actually changed a lot. If you go back about a couple of decades, things have changed a lot.
Can you talk? There's a lot of purity when you talk about your book, and this is what Ruskin Bond also has written, But when it comes to the mass market, there are people who actually train would-be authors or writers, how to write a good story, how to write crime fiction and stuff like that. So do you think a writer is born a writer, or can a writer be manufactured, so to speak?
I think a writer is always born a writer, because the stories which come and stories that you write, they come from your heart. And as I say that I write stories when I get time, but I'm always writing stories in my head, even during my sleep. Even some of my dreams become stories. So I always keep on writing stories in my head. It's just the penning down of the stories which needs time. Now, that is something that you're born with. Your imagination, your different way of looking at things, your perception. That's something that you're born with.
Yes.
But yes, once you've written that, after that it needs a lot of a lot of changes, a lot of editing. That is something which is part of the overall flow. Now, if you train a particular writer, I think that you're actually pruning that writer's wings, which is not the right thing. You should let the imagination flow for that writer, for the poet, because the moment you restrict him or her, you are actually restricting the thought, which can lead or always leads to a nice story or a poem. So I have never believed in any kind of restrictive thought process.
And this kind of a herd mentality where a particular writer writes about maybe historical fiction and then everybody else follows suit.
Yeah.
Isn't this trend worrying?
It is, but you see that's everywhere, right? A film becomes a box office hit, then there are multiple films coming one after the other, following suit. Then in books also it happens. Everywhere it happens. People always think that imitation is the best way of
flattery.
But somehow I have thought, and for me, short stories, I have faced a lot of problems. Even today I face a lot of hardship when it comes to publishing a collection of short stories. All the big publishing houses, they would say that it is not something that sells well in the market.
That's what I was about to ask you. Short story as a genre does not sell.
Which is surprising.
Which is surprising.
Yeah. And if you look at the pace of today's world, and a person who wants to read, he or she would be actually picking up a short story because of the paucity of time.
Absolutely.
But somehow the publishing houses are not pushing it to that extent, which is sad and surprising at the same time. But I've been requested to write novels and move away from short stories, but I have not done that. Maybe I will not do that till the time a novel comes from within. I'm not just going to write a novel to be a successful writer. I will never do that. I'll keep on writing short stories because that's what comes to me naturally. Maybe it will be accepted by people, maybe it won't. But even if 10 people would read my collection of short stories and they will come back and tell me something that has touched their heart, I think my job is done.
Absolutely. And success is not measured simply by the numbers that sell, but then, like you said, if you touch somebody's heart, you never know, tomorrow somebody might come and would want to make a film out of a short story as well. There are people who are very perceptive. There are people who appreciate your craft, and that's what a writer writes for. I was just wondering, 7 patents to your credit, and then a short story book out, another on the way out. There's this left brain, right brain theory. Yeah, the left side is the analytical one, the right is the imaginative one, so yours is kind of perfectly balanced, is it? Yeah?
Till now, yes, it is.
It is? And what kind of a writer are you? Are you a moody writer? Do you move away from people when you write?
While writing, I need my space. I cannot write if there's a lot of commotion and a lot of disturbance across. I cannot write. I need my space. I need my time. I have my room where I sit and write in the morning, where the kids would have left for school. My wife would have gone for work. I'm all alone. That's when I write. And I don't restrict my thought when I'm writing. I'm kind of cross the boundary of realism many a times. I get into surrealism, and I've written stories which are on the borderline of realism and surrealism also. And there are certain stories, and it's interesting you mentioned the right brain, left brain. In this Shifting Clouds, there is a story called Remedy, which talks about the right brain and the left brain. The protagonist is a medical case, and there is something that goes wrong in the connection between the left and the right brain, and how her brain malfunctions and what it leads to. So that story is Remedy. So anybody listening to this who is interested in the amazing functions of brain should definitely read Remedy as a story.
Really? And did you kind of research for the story?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh, that's so wonderful. So how often do you enter into this research mode for your stories?
So I keep on reading a lot, right? Medical journals or scientific journals, fiction, non-fiction, biography. I'm an avid reader. I keep on reading. And while reading, if something interesting comes and hits me, I start thinking about a story that what if somebody would have gone through this as an experience? What is it that he or she would have actually experienced? So then a story starts coming, and then I'm a firm believer that life is what happens to you. You cannot plan, right? So, and that's where the unpredictability of life comes in. That's where you plan for something, something else happens. We have our dreams, but we end up like either with a broken heart, but yet dreaming something else. So all my stories, all the short stories, would have a touch of this unpredictability of human life in it, and there is a twist at the end in the stories, which is, again, once you read, you will realize that most of the time that is what happens to us also in our daily lives. So that is how it is. It's all stories are very emotional because I'm a very emotional person. I come across not as an emotional person, especially in office, but as a writer, I'm definitely very emotional from within.
Great. And what is it that you would like to tell people who are wanting to write? Any tips you would want to give?
One thing I would like to suggest to anybody and everybody, irrespective of the age or gender or religion or caste, is that if you feel something and if you have the gift of the gab, don't restrict yourself. Go ahead and write. Forget about what you're writing. Forget about whether you're typing or whether you're writing or you're texting. Just go ahead and write and let your heart flow. And you never know, a beautiful story or a novel or a poem can come out of it. And people they think a lot about how their stories can get published, how a book will get published. I always tell them that don't think on those lines, just go and write. Like in my case, I have never, this shitting cloud that happened in 2014 was not planned, right? For me, life always is something that happens. I never plan for it. Now,
I'm sure you must have planned those patents.
Well, that was part of it, but then this book came out because few of my stories, one of my cousin who is also an established author, accidentally he got hold of few of my stories. He read those stories. He loved them. He said that, have you ever given it a thought of publishing these stories? I said, no, I don't think they are good enough. He said, okay. He didn't tell me anything. He sent those stories to a couple of publishing houses. They liked those stories. They called me up. They said that we are absolutely okay in publishing a collection of short stories if you're up for it. I said, I don't have so many stories. They said that we are giving you time. You go ahead and write. And then I started writing. I thought that I have so many stories in my head. Let me go ahead and write. I wrote, and this book got published. You should not
really a labor of love, you mean.
Absolutely.
Yes, and without thinking of the end result, one should just focus on one's writing.
Absolutely.
And writing any which way is therapeutic, which is why you have such a beatific smile and almost a Zen monk-like peace on your face. Ashoke Mitra, thank you so much for talking to us on Horizons, and we wish you a wonderful literary journey ahead.
Thank you. It was an honor for me. Thank you.